Hey there, this is Matthew, the average gun owner, and I just wanted to make this short video basically as a primer for anybody who, like me, is known as the gun guy in his community, his workplace, or his friend circle, and always gets the question, oh my God, we had another, horrific mass shooting. Something needs to be done. Let's pass some legislation. Let's enact a ban. Let's talk about red flag laws. And I know it's frustrating to have the conversation over and over and over because the modus operandi is basically the same in every one of these situations. I even put out a quick post last night and listed, okay, let me guess, here are the things we're going to learn, and it looks like 3 out of 4 of those are true. So first, this is really a breakdown. Let's forget about the breakdown of society, norms and values, and loving thy neighbor, and family, the importance of family and friends, and helping their loved ones who are going through trouble. I'm going to avoid the whole discussion over the complete lack of mental health treatment in this country. I remember growing up, you knew where the hospitals were. People would get mental health treatment. Now I speak to friends of mine and they can't even find a psychologist or psychiatrist who will see them for more benign issues. So there's definitely a serious issue that somebody with more knowledge than me on the topic can deal with, where we have a lot of people out there. Well, let's be honest. I mean, we can all take a test or talk to a therapist and find out we suffer from some sort of mental illness in one form or another, whether it's just simple anxiety, late depression, or something else. I get it, okay? Understood. But we're talking about people who are potential threats and hazards to themselves or others, or have made specific threats to others, which apparently this individual has from yesterday. But, I think we can all agree that those treatment options out there, in part because society claimed a stigma was getting attached to it. So, let's stop sending them to a hospital for treatment. It was the same thing in schools where they have kids with certain disabilities. Well, we don't want them to have to go to a separate classroom. Let's just mainstream them into general population. And in many cases, that doesn't work out. Some cases it does. Fine. That's great. But like in the case of these people that have completely just snapped, you have a certain population that will not benefit from just being mainstreamed. They need serious treatment, and we all know it. So let's talk about what I think are the 3 main failures. It would be failure to prosecute, failure to prohibit the possession, and the failure to provide treatment. So failure to prosecute. In this case, in most other cases, you have a situation where the guy has a history. Local law enforcement, state police, FBI, he was on their radar. It happens all the time. Apparently, this situation is no different in that there were prior, domestic violence cases. I'm not sure how any of the adjudications went, but that's kind of irrelevant, for these purposes. I'm understanding that the leak, and apparently this is verified information because this leak came from an internal memo between the law enforcement agencies that the media got their hands on, but apparently the person made very specified threats, I think either to his unit in the Army or something else, and made a very specific terroristic type threat that in and of itself should have been dealt with and would have brought them to the path of being able to get guns out of the hands of this guy because he was a threat to others. So, and I also remember New Jersey and other states even recently tightened up their laws on firearm possession for someone who is adjudicated for domestic violence. In most cases, I think if the charges are pending in many states, they can take your guns away if there's just a restraining order against you. So let's not get into a whole argument whether restraining orders are overused and abused for another day. But I'm understanding here that this guy did have a restraining order against him. Don't know what the final adjudication was, but if you're somebody who's making specific threats, you've engaged in instances of domestic violence, and then you couple that together with just having been committed to an institution recently. What that was related to, I don't know. I don't know if it has anything to do with these specified threats that he had made against others. But the fact of the matter is people now want to talk about red flag laws. So you're going to get questions from people and they're going to say, well, we need red flag laws. A red flag law would have worked. How? How would a red flag law have worked any better than the laws we already have on the books? there were, from what I can see, probably at least 3 avenues where this person could have been disarmed. And everybody watching the news and everybody on the news was like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. I mean, if this is the history, if this is what the law enforcement memo is saying about this guy's very recent history, there's probably somebody that should have stopped and said, yep, you know what? Let's prosecute this case. Let's push ahead with the domestic violence, get this guy, treatment, get him help, get the guns out of the house for now. Let's figure this out. Whether that happened or not, I honestly don't know. But I think this is a situation where everybody is pretty much in agreement that if you have a violent history, domestic violence being one of them, I don't want domestic abusers to have access to firearms, especially when, they're shown a propensity of violence and they are a threat to others. There's really no question over that. But we don't need red flag laws to do it. And, to be honest with you, and I know people don't want to rely on family, friends, and society to do it, but really, I mean, this guy was in the military. Things that he did happen while he was in the military related to his military service. I don't know. I'm hearing reports that he was still in the reserves at this time. What, did they not prosecute him because they didn't want him to have to leave the reserves? What do? We don't want to prosecute people for other sociological reasons. So we don't prosecute this guy because, he's serving in the military. We don't want to jam him up. Maybe we jam these people up. I'm sorry. I hate to say it. But if you're not going to give them the treatment they need, then don't put the disarmament of these people in the hands of the government on a preemptive basis. And that's what red flag laws are. So on the issue of the type of firearm he used or, the magazines that were used, I get it. The person you're talking to probably doesn't know anything about firearms. That's why they think banning a certain type of firearm or banning a magazine capacity is going to make a difference. And those who know about firearms and train with firearms know it's completely irrelevant. I mean, you could ban every rifle out there, not just semi-automatic. You can ban every hunting rifle out there, every shotgun out there. Like, seriously. There's these guys that I watch in Canada. They're computer guys, and they were talking about New York wants to ban 3D printers because people make guns, and they pointed out, certain people in the U.S. want to ban rifles but allow you to own shotguns, and shotguns are quite literally one of the most devastating battlefield weapons out there. But hey, apparently if you duck hunt, that's okay. But basically with an AR, the issue with the AR is you ban the AR and they're going to use other weapons. People mistakenly think the AR is the most commonly used firearm in a mass shooting, but the FBI statistics, the evaluations of it that I've seen have proven otherwise, especially if you take in the statistics of the more broad definition of a mass shooting that's used by some of the anti-Second Amendment groups, which cover, many, many more shootings that don't qualify under the traditional definition, and a vast majority of those shootings are 9mm or even 22 rimfires that are involved. But just looking at the more restrictive definition of it, in most of those cases, it's more likely going to be a handgun used, but it's really kind of irrelevant. It's more what's popular and available at the time. If you get rid of all AR rifles and round them all up tomorrow, you're not going to have somebody like this going, oh, shucks, I really, really, really wanted to use that AR. It's a 7-8 pound rifle, just like a shotgun or anything else. So, okay, he'll go in there with a shotgun. I mean, shotgun is extremely devastating, and you can get shotgun tubes that hold 9 rounds or so. You could go in with a .357 Magnum revolver. Many of them have 8, they hold 8 rounds in the cylinder. And you don't have to be Jerry Miculek to reload that quick, but you could reload with a moon clip with 9mm or .357 just as quick as you could a semi-automatic pistol. And in the case of this and every other situation, basically the guy was reloading. I mean, the fact that he had a 30-round magazine, if in fact he did, I don't even know. Be honest with you, in many of these shootings, especially the one in Florida where everybody started banging the drum to get rid of 30-round magazines, it turns out the reports come out and he was using 10-round magazines because they were easier to conceal. So, okay. Which, ironically, in the 80s was the argument for banning handguns because they were easy to conceal. So, I mean, that's the problem with the argument, is they've just flipped. They went, we got to ban handguns, they're easy to conceal. And then, okay, the Supreme Court says we can have handguns. Okay, now we want to ban the rifles we said they could own before, but since we can't ban the handguns, now we want to ban the rifles. So, take that for what it's worth. But anyone arguing for a ban of a certain type of firearm has to deal with the fact that the argument has been made both ways by the anti-Second Amendment crowd. So it's something that you're going to have to deal with before you go to your friend and start arguing with them that we need to ban this certain type of rifle. I mean, let's be honest. You want to say I can only use World War I technology? All right, 45 caliber 1911, Mossberg 500 with buckshot. Probably a lot more devastating with that than I would be with an AR, to be honest with you. So, I'm not going to belabor the point on there because it's really an issue where that person who thinks we need to ban a specific kind of weapon really needs to go out and experience the different kinds of firearms and then be able to learn for themselves that, oh, yeah, okay, I see your point here. So until that happens, you can argue till you're blue in the face, but the person that doesn't have the experience with firearms just isn't gonna know. And it's funny because a lot of people say to me, "Well, they're still sending me that video of that military officer who was shooting an AR at the range and he was flailing back and forth with the recoil." To that, I just show him the video of that little 9-year-old girl that was shooting the AR in a competition, and it was barely even jostling her hair with the recoil. I mean, that was clearly a media political stunt by that particular member of the military, and it was shameful. But you hand an AR to somebody who's watched that video and said that AR is just powerful, and the guy claimed he had temporary PTSD from it. All right, you take him to range, squeeze all 4 or 5 rounds, a 5.56, and he's going to turn to you or she's going to turn to you and be like, yeah, okay, how can I handle that 100 times better than this guy who was supposedly trained in the military? But that's the problem. That's the barrier we're up against. If you can't convince that person to go to the range with you and spend the money on the range fees and the ammo to experience this and learn it, you're really not going to get that far with them. So it has to be more of a cultural change. I think events that are going on worldwide, you have a lot of people saying, okay, I think I do need a firearm. There could be, attacks in the U.S. soil again. Definitely our family members aren't safe in certain regions of the country. So people are more apt to talk about whether or not, civilians should own certain type of firearms, when a tragedy happens, because they're also kind of seeing the flip side that there's some utility to it. So here's an opportunity to sit down and be logical and rational about it and spend a few minutes talking to somebody and explaining, hey, these are the points. This is why these certain laws aren't going to work. You could put, bans on transporting ammo in the same case as the firearm as you cross state lines. I mean, what's that going to do? I mean, any one of these mass shooters, did they wake up in the morning, start loading up their trunk and go, oh, damn it, I don't have the proper case to lock up my ammunition. God damn, I wanted to go out and cause havoc today, but I can't because of this particular law. I mean, look, if we're being honest with ourselves, if you're willing to go out there and commit multiple homicides, none of those other laws matter. And from what I'm seeing, it looks like this guy may have actually been a prohibited person. But to my earlier point, if he wasn't because they didn't prosecute and prohibit him in the first place or provide him the treatment he needed, he should have been a prohibited person. But it looks like from the facts I'm seeing early on that he probably was a prohibited person and may have obtained the firearm through illegal means anyway. And you can do everything you want. Millions of firearms out there in circulation. So unless you're willing to go to your friend and say, I think we round, even with what's going on around the world and, actual governments, federal governments actually kind of resulting in more death and carnage than individual person-on-person crime, that's a different argument for a different story if you want to go there. But a lot of people are seeing that. They're seeing the utility of firearms, and they're engaging you with these questions because maybe they are open to having the conversation and understanding it. So it's your job to sit and explain to them, this gun law won't work, that gun law won't work. They've tried it here, they tried it there. Where they have the strictest gun laws, that's where the carnage is still happening, because what they've really done is they've convinced the good people, hey, I'm a good person. I don't want to have a firearm. I don't want to contribute to the badness that's going on in the world. So I'm going to live my life. I'm going to live in an area where there's high crime, but I'm not going to have a firearm because firearms are bad. And just like the people who lived in southern Israel, those were the people that kind of suffered from that mentality. So we really do need to change that mentality. and it's going to be one person at a time, but we can't dictate it. Like anti-gun people want to dictate legislation on us and dictate what we can or can't do. We want to give them the information. I believe most people still are free thinkers at heart. They're seeing what's going on around the world, and they'll think about it, and they'll start to realize and understand, okay, maybe I need to have a different view on this. I've seen that with a lot of people I deal with, day to day, and I've seen a change in their thinking on this. And sometimes it takes major world events to get them there, but eventually it does happen. So have those conversations. If you don't want to have, the tit for tat back and forth on every single point from the start of the conversation, show them this video first, and then have them come back to you, or you watching the video now as a result, go back to your friend and say, okay, I understand what he's saying, but I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. Then you can go out and look at the more finite research, which, you know what, I don't envy you being in this position. There's a lot of bad information out there, a lot of bad data out there, and it's a real minefield to kind of wade through to get the proper information. So I think the best way to do it is, okay, if you can't figure out which data set to look at, who's skewing the numbers, who's being selective in the numbers they're giving you or looking at, then go try out some firearms. Go to a range, shoot different firearms, and see, is this really the be-all, end-all to solving the issue of crime in the U.S.? Is it going to help protect me, or do we just need to get rid of them all because then everyone will be safe? And then you can have that conversation with yourself and consider what's happened in other countries, what's happened in our cities in the U.S., and realize, hey, look, I've got this handgun in my hand, and I've been shooting it in this, and it's not making me feel like a raging murderous asshole, so I kind of don't get it. It kind of maybe is the person. It kind of maybe is society. It kind of maybe is the fact that we're not prosecuting bad people. We're not prohibiting them from getting their hands on firearms, whether that's the government or whether it's the guy's friends or family members. I mean, let's be honest. You have somebody who's dealing drugs in your family and they're getting hands on firearms. We're protecting these people. The family members and friends are protecting these people, not turning them in. Look, if you got somebody out there has a propensity to violence and they have access to firearms, you really need to step in and get something done, because all the red flag laws in the world will do nothing if the public isn't going to law enforcement and saying, hey, look, here's the guy. This is what he's got. He's a convicted felon. He's using a firearm. He's robbing people. He's sticking guns in people's face to steal their cars. And this is happening every day in America. And the person gets away with it. And then when a tragedy happens, everybody turns and they want to sue the manufacturer of the gun, or they want to pass new laws making it harder for me to defend myself and my family. And look, my argument is that's illogical. Whole nother discussion for another day. So again, hope this was useful to some people. If there's any other questions, put them down in the comments. Hopefully someone will see them and answer them. Maybe I'll do a video on more specific points in the future, but that's kind of the whole, I think, overarching conversation that's had after every one of these tragedies happen. Again, thanks for your time. I'm Matthew, the Average Gun Owner.